Hello, my name is Parker Meredith, and I have ADHD. I'm sure to many of my fellow students and any teachers in the audience, this comes as no big surprise. Today, I'd like to move a little bit beyond the label that's given me with ADHD. For better or for worse, ADHD has shaped me into the person that I am today standing before you. So I'd like to talk about some of the weird and interesting quirks I've developed over the years as a result of living with ADHD and how I've learned to not only accept these traits and manage them, but to embrace them as a part of who I am. But first, I need to explain a little bit what exactly ADHD is. The commonly accepted theory behind ADHD is that two of my brain's neurotransmitters, dopamine and norepinephrine, are impaired. Those are responsible for cognitive alertness and deep concentration, respectively. In addition, the brain tissues in my frontal lobe are thinner than normal. That's the area in blue up there on the brain diagram. The name of ADHD pretty well explains ADHD symptoms. AD, as in attention deficit, as in I have a hard time paying attention. D, or H, as in hyperactivity, as in duh. D, as in disorder, as in I'm weird, different, and otherwise not normal. So that's basically ADHD in a nutshell. Now, let's begin with my beginning. I was a handful as a young child. My parents called me Tigger for a reason, after all. I was always bouncing about, running around, and just generally causing mayhem. I could entertain myself with anything that I could get my little hands on, as shown by my habit of emptying every single cabinet in our kitchen, prompting my parents to invest in child locks for an 8-month-old, except for the cabinet with pots and pans. When I went on errands with parents, I'd often wander off and get lost unless my parents kept an absolute eagle eye on me at all times. For a while, I was just treated as an adventurous and energetic little kid, but when I started attending school, my behavior started to prove a bit more disruptive. I was doing fine in all my classes and all that, and I was making A's and stuff, but teachers would often report back to my parents of incidents of me getting up in the middle of class and just aimlessly wandering around or zoning out to my own devices, which prompted us to seek some medical attention for my ADHD. And with that, enter Concerta. This is the medicine that I've been taking since 3rd grade every day before I come to school. It stimulates the dopamine and norepinephrine in my brain to levels of activity similar to a normal brain. Yes, ironically, ADHD, a disorder commonly associated with hyperactivity, is controlled by a stimulant. Go figure. While it certainly does help, it's far from perfect. I'll still often find myself mentally wandering off, and I'll need instructions repeated to me multiple times in order to process them, but I'm far better off with my medicine than without it. Now, as I mentioned, because Concerta works by being a stimulant, other stimulants such as caffeine behave rather strangely. Let me put it like this. If Concerta acts as a precision cruise missile, caffeine acts more like a carpet bomb, stimulating every part of my brain, including my impaired dopamine and norepinephrine. Because of my brain's unusual structure, the effect of stimulating dopamine and norepinephrine counteracts the overall stimulation caused by the caffeine, meaning caffeine basically does nothing at all. And in fact, in small enough doses, it'll actually calm down my hyperactivity somewhat. Similarly, it takes a lot for me to get overstimulated to the point where I'm wiry and uncomfortable. So, those of you who are wondering why I'm not a coffee person in the mornings, because I am horrible with mornings, now you know. My mind always seems to be wandering. I always seem to be storming with different associated thoughts and ideas coming into my head at random. This allows me to be a spontaneous thinker and to think outside the box. This proved especially helpful with my time with Destination Imagination, a team-based competition focused around creative problem solving and imaginative thinking, especially in the instant challenge, in which we would have to come up with a solution to a problem or a skit based on a theme in only around 5 minutes. Naturally, my bouncy brain lent itself very well to this instant challenge. On the other side of the coin, it keeps me up at night, quite literally. My busybody brain doesn't really like to mellow out and actually try and focus on going to sleep. I'll often just lay there and think, just keeping myself awake by thinking or getting distracted by whatever happens to me in my room. But on the other hand, this also allows me to be quite the night owl. I can stay up into the wee hours of the morning, sometimes even all night, without too much of an issue, which is helpful for whenever my AD part of ADHD kicks in and I push assignments to the last minute. One of the more difficult things for me to manage as a result of my ADHD has been executive functions. I am horrible at timekeeping and scheduling. In particular, estimating how long things will take proves to be very difficult. It's become such a recurring trend in my behavior that my friends have coined the term Parker time to attribute to my inability to schedule. Let me give you an example. I'll be like coming home and I'll text my friends, oh, I'll be home and on Skype or whatever in 15 minutes. And they know that usually means I'll be anywhere from around 15 to 45 minutes. To compensate for this, I've invested in a planner, which has helped me to schedule activities so that things don't flow into one another and that I don't have conflicts. Whenever I remember to actually use said planner, it's proven to be a valuable asset to me many times. Similarly, my physical organization skills are bad. My room has often been labeled as the disaster zone by my parents, and my system of organizing papers consists of just having 2 different stacks of paper just sort of stuffed willy-nilly into my messenger bag. I also used to be terrible at forgetting things all the time. I would never bring all the books I would need to school or all those things I want to bring over to a friend's house and things like that. So to compensate, I've developed some rather pack mule-like tendencies. I'll carry everything on me that I can. It's gotten to the point where I won't wear or buy shirts or pants without pockets in them. And I'll take much more than I'll need to events and gatherings just in case I might happen to need it. As an example, I carry not 1, but 2 fully loaded bags to school every day with all of my books, electronics, supplies, papers, chargers, and even some weird stuff like duct tape and an Ethernet cord of all things at one point, just so that I wouldn't be left unprepared for whatever life can throw at me. So my way of dealing with my lack of organizational skills has helped me to be more prepared for whatever life can throw at me. As anybody who's ever been in the same room as me knows, I'm very fidgety. Fidgeting is, of course, a common trait with people with ADHD. There's the H hard at work there. Me in particular, I tend to shake my leg up and down in an almost spastic manner. And this isn't just some light, subtle shake by any means, no. It's more of a quaking or trembling. I've had cases where teachers would call me out for my fidgety leg from their desks across the room. Oh, no, yeah, that's on that side. Okay. I also tend to fidget with small objects that are near me, such as pens, sticks, my phone, this clicker, or whatever else just happens to be in reach. I'll often just habitually have something in my hands that I'm messing with, just so I have something to fidget with. In particular, rings are a particularly strong cause of fidgeting. Because they don't fit very well on my fingers and they're prone to have a very loose fit, they are a prime target for fidgeting. So I often don't wear them. Interestingly, people with ADHD tend to have a sort of hyper-focus on their interests. It's how I learned to read when I was only about 2 years old. I wanted to know what these weird symbols on this piece of paper meant, so I did. It was as simple as that. Similarly, ADHD hasn't really gotten in the way of my academic pursuits because I've always been interested in learning in general. When I'm at home, engaged in my hobbies, such as playing video games or on Skype with my friends or whatever, my sister will often have to barge into my room and tell me that Mom has been yelling at me for the last 5 minutes to come down and eat dinner. It's gotten to the point now where she'll just open the door and walk away, and I'll know that I've been missing something. But I wouldn't really be where I am today if it wasn't for the support of my family. They know how to keep my ADHD in check. They know how to get my attention if I get distracted. They'll make lists of things for me to do so that I don't forget to do them, a habit which I picked up on myself. And they'll tell me to write things down if something comes up in my planner or whatever so that I don't forget about it later. But the most important thing that they've done for me is they've never let me feel sorry for myself because I have ADHD. They've helped me to establish the resolve that I'll just have to work a little bit harder than most people. They've kept their expectations high, and therefore my expectations high, so that I don't fall behind. The thought process in their family has never been, oh, poor Parker can't do such and such, because I encounter a situation in which I struggle. ADHD has never been an excuse, but rather just a trait or an obstacle that I'll have to deal with. So, what should you take away from this? If anything, you should take this as an example of embracing what makes you, you, and not to fret too much over the negativity of any labels given to you. I've been diagnosed with ADHD, a condition literally labeled as a disorder for as long as I can remember, and frankly, I'm fine with that. Personally, I've accepted ADHD as a unique and interesting trait that's helped me become the individual that I am. And having embraced who I am, I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you very much.